Hi everyone, welcome back to our HealthTech Medicon Valley event. And now we're going into our concluding panel discussion. So if you are able to only jump in and out for certain sessions, this will be a great time to get a summary of all that we've discussed during today's event. And I have on stage with me Ebba Forenes, CEO of Smile Incubator, Tuva Jeksmarks, Head of Innovation at Capio, part of Ramsay Sante, as well as Per Brink, CSR Partner at Roche. And online with us, we have Marcus Hergott, Chief Technical Officer at Bioinnovation Institute. So we've had a lot of lively discussions today, great pitches. What has been your one key takeaway from the sessions that you have engaged with? Maybe we start with you, Ebba.
Wow. Actually, the promise that lies in this and the creativity that we have in this region. I think we've seen some really great pitches and very nice approaches to treating untreated conditions.
Tuva.
Well, actually, I'm a bit happy from the care provider side that actually I see the creativity and I say, oh, the future hopefully is quite bright after all.
Yeah.
Even if it's difficult, it's a long journey. I feel more happy now.
There is a future for health tech.
There is a future, absolutely.
Excellent. Per, what are your thoughts?
That we do have a great number of, that we have lots of great solutions out there that are there and just waited to be used. And also that we start to see that it's all through collaborations and partnerships that we can do it. And we hear that from so many different players here. So that's very promising.
Absolutely. Marcus, what are your thoughts where you're sitting in Denmark on the discussions today?
I think all of the above, and going back to the partnerships as a non-profit early startup investor, I mean, we're very happy to see that there's already a lot of partnerships, public-private partnerships being forged, and we also see a great road forward using the Nordic healthcare system's strengths to build, for example, digital solutions.
And I mean, all of us, all four of you represent different perspectives in the ecosystem. We've talked about collaboration and involving different partners. What do you think each of you can bring to further health tech forward? So Ebba, incubator, Tuva, healthcare provider, Per, pharma, and Marcus, incubator as well. What do you think you could do?
Connect companies to people like you. I think that's important, and like you, that we have. So I think being the spider, the entity that can support all these companies in getting connections, because it's quite difficult. They are two people, and they are running their business, they're developing their app. Yeah. They don't have capacity to reach out, to keep track of what's going on, see grants, see challenges that are being posted, and keep the network of the industry and the providers. So I think that's a key thing that we can provide in the non-profit sector, where we are neutral.
Very good. Tuva.
Well, for us, we are kind of the long-term customers because we are providing the care. So I see that our clinicians and our patients are actually the customer base for many of the companies. But I also believe that we could find a way to actually help some of the startup companies to really tweak their solutions to fit into the needs that we have, because the needs that we see are massive, but also that we could actually be bridging the companies into what are the true needs. How could this be a scalable solution? I think that could we contribute with.
Yeah, and from our perspective, I think that we can contribute with a global perspective for if you say a startup in the Nordic regions, as well as having, if you say, also the business perspective and help develop that and see how can you really turn it into something that can be sustainable over time as well.
Marcus, what are your thoughts?
I suppose we have a relatively simple purpose in that we can provide the early stage funding when taking, let's say, a university or hospital-based projects towards a startup to sort of seed this ecosystem. So I think there we can be a partner for everyone else in seeing how we can start more companies that address more unmet patient and customer needs.
So it's very clear that the four of you represent real strong potential partners for any startup wishing to go further in HealthTech Medicon Valley. I have a question for Tuva and Per. You mentioned, both of you, that you would love to help startups develop their business model a bit more and make sure that it's actually meeting a concrete need. But I'm sure that you're also getting so many requests from many startups wanting to partner with you. What would be your advice as to when they come to you, what should they be prepared with so that you're able to further discussion with them? Let's start maybe with Per this time.
Yeah, I have mentioned that earlier today that not really preparing a pitch in terms of going into all the details, the technical details of a solution, but rather be open to have a more open discussion on the common vision, or like where do they see that we have a common need, or that is really what we need to start off with.
Yeah, and to me it's also that the companies have prepared the different perspectives. You need to have the medical side of things, you need to have the data side of things, you need to have the business side of things, that all the perspectives are in the dialogue, because we need to have a bit of everything.
Can I jump in?
Absolutely, Ebba.
So I will talk for all the startups which I talk to every day. And what do you want? What do we want from you? The startups, they want accessibility.
Yeah.
They want advice, and they do want the dialogue before they have all of the good things that you mentioned, because they need to understand which of these good things should they be focusing on, and how do you want them presented, and what do you want to see?
Yeah.
So that would be my big wish that be, how are you accessible, how can they reach you, how can we engage with you, where they can actually pose questions, just have a dialogue to understand what they should come with when they're getting sharper.
Well, actually, that's one of the reasons why Ramses Hanté choose to have the innovation hub in this area was actually that to interact with the ecosystem here. From our company, we also have a preventive care lab. We actually have an incubator of our own in Paris for only prevention companies. So we have some access in the French market, but here it was actually to just do these interactions. So somehow we could find something good after this meeting. So.
And Marcus, maybe you also have something that you would like to tell Capio and Roche from your startups.
Right. So I think I also second that we see in health tech, we see a lot of very technology-focused companies who are very excited about their technology, and there's definitely need to interact both with the healthcare sector, which sometimes is happening, but in particular with corporates like pharmaceutical industry or established even medtech companies, to understand a little bit more how they see the potential for the solution. I see especially great potential in the pharmaceutical industry, which is showing a lot of interesting digital solutions, but it's usually looking for something a little more than just a great technical platform.
Tuva, you mentioned something really interesting. You have this preventive lab based in France.
Well, we have an incubator in Paris. It's the Ramsey Foundation is driving a incubator for companies only focused on prevention. So,
Because one of the key points that we've been discussing throughout today's event was, the need to shift to prevention, as well as the need to find reimbursement models that support that shift. And given that, Ramsey, you're in many markets, Roche as well, and maybe Ebba and Marcus, you also have perspectives from your experience. Have you seen a good example of a reimbursement model that supports preventive solutions that we could adopt to Denmark and Sweden?
I have seen it in the US.
Okay.
And actually I've seen it as a result of COVID, where the need to have remote monitoring and remote therapeutics became evident as everybody was locked back at home, especially those who needed the support. So they have fast-tracked reimbursement models with special codes. I haven't seen it as much here, but it's a huge challenge for everyone in prevention.
Well, the reimbursement models has really changed during COVID, but mostly for like teleconsultations and that kind of care. But that's not on the preventive side. But I really believe that the experiment with the region of Stockholm with the health bond is really, really exciting. So we are really looking into that as a future model because it shifts the mindset to a preventive way.
For the sake of our attendees, could you share a bit more about what this health or social bond tries to do? Why is it so interesting?
Well, it's interesting because you actually invest in prevention. So you're putting the funding there and what you split is the cost reduction that you can see in a number of years. But it's also based on what we have been touching upon today. It's based on that you need to have a clear case when it comes to data. So this is about pre-diabetes. So you have a lot of data on if we do this in a preventive space, we will get the cost reduction and the less suffering of all the patients. So you need to have those things in order. And there are not so many conditions where you have that. You have pre-diabetes, you might have hypertension and some other things. So you need to, all of these companies really need to collect the clinical data so that we can get there. But I think the model is really interesting because then you can get all the investors to actually invest and have a good return of investment in a good sustainable way for the future. So I'm really hoping for this one.
Yeah.
And I can just echo that. I was also thinking about the health impact bond in the region of Stockholm, that we've been talking about it for so long, and now we do really see that this is being tried, and so I agree. We should really look at that even more and see how can we scale that.
Marcus, from where you stand or sit in Denmark, do you have any great examples as well on the reimbursement side?
Probably not so much from Denmark. Again, in the US, there has been some traction from insurance companies to look into possible ways to actually reimburse prevention, especially for chronic disease. But it's still a work in progress, and it's not covering a very big swath of the total market, but it's certainly happening.
Yes, Ebba and then Tuva.
I actually realized that I do have an example in Sweden, and that is Skandia, who has been working with prevention for their company, their clients, where they intervene and they prevent people being on sick leave, actually, by offering different kind of support over the net preventively. So they have been quite successful.
And I must say the obvious as well. We have a capitation model in primary care in Sweden that actually are designed to drive prevention. But unfortunately, the time spent for the preventive actions to actually, for the diseases to occur is so long, so that for the people working in one specific care center, the mindset will still be we need to do the ordinary daily business first. So, but the model is actually there. So from a financial standpoint, if you are getting reimbursement to take care of the population, you should focus on prevention. But it needs to be tweaked a bit, I think. But the ground is there, which is not the case in all our other countries where it's a fee for service. You only get paid when people are sick. So we have some good things to build upon, I think.
Per.
No, I'm also optimistic about the future, also given the discussions we had earlier today on the integration of data, where we do see that if we are successful moving forward with not only collecting more data, but actually using data that is already being collected in even better ways, that will help us move towards more, if you say, the predictive analytics area, and with that also enabling preventive care in a much higher degree than we do today. So I think that if we also get the data part working, I think that we will move even more into this direction.
And I think you are starting to look forward, and I would like to bring us there as well, looking at the future of health tech. And I asked this question at the session on integrating health-related data, but I would like to also open the question to Tuva, Ebba, and Marcus. There's a lot of potential and opportunities for health tech, especially in the region that we're in, Denmark and Sweden and the Nordics. What do we need to do in order to get to where we want to be in, say, 5 years? What needs to happen, and who needs to do it? Tuva.
Well, we have a homework to do. We are actually looking really much into our own systems on how could we accept third-party solutions? How could we build our ecosystem internally within our company so that we actually could take on all of these nice and really good initiatives, and how could we do that? So we have a homework to do, and that is actually what the Innovation Hub for Ramsay Center focus mostly on. How do we build that from our side? Because there are so many nice solutions out there. We don't have to invent everything ourselves. We are not supposed to do that. So how can we actually put them into our ecosystem? That's our key thing for us as a homework to do.
Ebba, what are your thoughts?
I would say the same, but I would say it for the public healthcare system. So there's actually two main things that are lacking, or maybe three. But first of all, be accessible for the companies to have a dialogue early on, to understand if their idea of a problem is a defined problem, and if their idea of a solution is something that the healthcare giver is actually that works in a practical setting. If that is the physiotherapist, if that is the nurse, whoever it is, they need to be able to access those people. So that would be number one. Number two, of course, buy the solutions. Find a way of not making it so difficult, and there's public procurement laws, etc. So this is complex, but find a way to be a little bit more creative and find a way that you can define in a legally correct way, obviously, to actually buy those services and be their first customer. If we want these companies to stay in this region, our public system have to take responsibility of being their first customer.
Per, before I get you to reflect, Marcus, what is your point of view? What needs to happen for us to get where we want to be in 5 years, and who needs to do it?
I could basically repeat what Ebba said about like probably the major hurdle in doing this locally is that it doesn't seem like it's very easy to get adoption, either in a public healthcare system and also at the communes, the counties or municipalities that are responsible usually for, I would say, more of the preventative care and also of elderly care in I guess all of Nordics. I would also like to add that it would be great to see more active university research base around health tech. I mean, we have awesome biotech research or awesome medical research, but it's not really focused on technology solutions, it's more on basic science. There's a little bit of a gap where we don't see really investment, and that would be more for other funding sources and also for the governments to fund more research into that so that we can build some strength from the academic base that we have.
Thanks, Marcus. And Per, we had a similar discussion in your session. Do you have some reflections from that as well as from what you've just heard on the same question?
Yeah, on the topic of how do we make things happen moving forward. And well, to me, it's coming back to the partnership and collaboration part, that no one can do this by themselves. No one will have the full solution. So it's all about, do we want to make a real change? How can we get everyone in the same room with the different perspectives, and seeing that it's not bad to just be part of. You don't need to own like the solution yourselves. It's rather about how do we do this collectively. Then we will come very, very far.
Fantastic. And I think that leads us into our final question, and it touches on the Nordic perspective towards working with health tech. And of course, we are in Medicon Valley, which is covering Denmark and Sweden. And I would like each of you just to choose one. What is one area in health tech that if Denmark and Sweden were to join forces, so not working within national borders, but actually working together as two countries, what is one area we could really make an impact? And this time, I would like to start with you, Marcus.
I think on the somehow making for the data access something that would allow deploying solutions more easily across borders, that would be a great start. I know it would be pretty challenging, but it would definitely make a big difference being able to go from, let's say, Denmark to Sweden relatively easily with the solution, or vice versa. I think that would give a much better incentive to keep working within this region rather than go somewhere elsewhere to scale up your business.
Thank you, Marcus. Ebba?
I would say provide the capital in this region by the governments. Now there's Swedish money and there's Danish money, soft money. Make this a pool make sure that the companies stay here, because many of these companies get bought out and they leave our region. Sometimes that's a good thing, because the entrepreneurs become serial entrepreneurs and reinvest, but we also lose competence. So make sure that we have support system to help these companies to a level where they can sell and have a real customer.
Thank you, Ebba. Tuva.
Yeah, I was also thinking about the market size, because there are so many good things going on here, but the size of the market is a bit too small.
Yeah.
So to make the scalable solution, I think that to combine the two market, at least like we heard about the data on the back end side, that you actually could pool that would make much bigger impact, because when we are talking on our other countries like France or Germany, the market size is so much bigger, so that even if the Nordics are further in some kind technical development, it still ends up with the market is too small to localize things. So
Market size.
yeah.
And I also think about, if you say the market size, starting with that, seeing that, okay, we will not compete on, if you talk about research, that we can offer the largest proportion of patients to do research on and so on. So rather it's about, yes, we can pull together to the two countries become larger, but adding to that, we also need to find, I think that we need to find what is it specifically that we could be the best at globally. And that's not only for if you say the startups, the established companies and so on to work on, but also I think that's together with authorities in these markets need to find what is it that we want to be best at. And one thing that has been discussed today is, of course, how do we use data? That could be an area where we could stand out if we really work with this from many different perspectives and really make that maybe our unique selling point, and then we focus on that.
Fantastic. And I think that wraps it up really well. The 4 points: data across borders, access, providing capital in a single pool so that we keep companies here in this cross-border region, looking at the market size, that together we are stronger, Denmark and Sweden. And finally, being very clear on how we are strong together and being able to compete globally. Fantastic. Thank you so much for a great discussion. Thank you, Marcus, as well.